Hello everyone, this is a video to give you an overview of how to use RIT's ArcGIS Online. To start, go to the address for RIT's ArcGIS Online, and when you do, you should see a login prompt like this. And by the way, you should have received an email to join RIT's ArcGIS Online, so if you haven't received that email, please email me or please accept the invitation that's included in that email. You want to click here on RIT, and what it's going to do is have you log in using your RIT name like you're checking your email. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And if everything works correctly, you should see the RIT logo, the words Rochester Institute of Technology, and so forth, and your RIT email address. Now for this week, you're going to create a basic web map that has raster and vector layers. So let me show you how that happens. To start, I want to click here where it says map, and this will allow me to create a basic web map. And we're going to follow basically these kind of instructions. So let's say we're going to focus on the United States, and the assignment instructions say pick an application domain of interest to you. So I'm going to use disaster management, and so I'm going to look for layers accordingly. And I'm pretty open to what you find here, as you'll soon see. The wild world of GIS data can be a little difficult to find things. I can change my base map around by clicking here. Like for example, I might use OpenStreetMap and see what that looks like and so forth. Okay. Now to start finding data related to disaster management, I'm going to go over here where it says add, and I'm going to search for layers, and I'm going to click here under ArcGIS Online, and this is where I'm going to go out into the sort of wild world of GIS data and use my new knowledge about metadata and data models to hopefully find some data that work good for me. So I have some background in disaster management, and I know that one data layer of interest is related to social vulnerability. So if I type in I start to see some data layers come up. Now, if we look at these icons, the feature layer is a vector layer. This is going to have an attribute table, and I'll show you how to do some other kind of analysis with that. If we look at this other one, social vulnerability index, this is what's called a tile layer, and that's basically a raster. It's basically a series of images kept together, as the name implies, as tiles. And this is basically how Google Maps works. So for example, I'll put social vulnerability index 2010 in there, and here I'll look at the metadata about it, make sure it's something I can use and so forth. I'll add it to the map, and here's what I get. Now this looks okay. If I go back over here, I can go to show the contents of the map. I see my legend and so forth, and it's pretty straightforward. I don't have any attribute tables because it's basically just images. All right. Now let's say I wanted to find a more interesting social vulnerability layer. If I go to add, I'll go again, search for layers. Back to my search, if I keep scrolling down my list, again, looking at these icons, feature layers are vectors, tiles are rasters. I see this interesting one, CDC Social Vulnerability Index, data CDC. Now, that looks good. The Center for Disease Control, updated in May, very good metadata, really well documented, and so forth. So this is what I'm going to add to my map as my vector layer for this assignment. And it's interesting to see how this thing performs sometimes. And if I go back, I now have two layers. It automatically does not draw because it's actually a pretty big layer. So what I'm going to do is I'll focus on Rochester. I'll turn this raster layer off of images, and I'll turn the CDC layer on. And you can see here how it's grayed out. It only draws at certain scale, so you have to zoom in a little bit more. Now notice how it changed the gray. It becomes sort of turned back on, and now you can really see more detail about this. And I also get the attribute table because it's a vector and so forth. And there's almost 72,000 features in there. Okay, that's the gist of what you're trying to do in this assignment. Now you're going to search for layers, It can be a little crazy out there, but do your best, see what's out there related to your application domain of interest. Another thing I want to show you is if you want to do some basic analysis, you have some of that kind of functionality built right into ArcGIS Online. If I go here to analysis, and you have a whole bunch of things, I'll do analyze patterns and then find hotspots. This is a very common way to find statistically significant clusters. And they have some nice help there. So I click on find hotspots. And because it's only going to work with a feature or vector layer, I've only got one in there. And I'll pick, again, I don't know exactly what these variables are, but this looks like elderly population, 65 or older. And I'll just use the current map extent to save a little processing time and so forth. Again, play around with this on your own. I'll do run analysis. And what it's going to do is it's going to run the hotspot algorithm on this data and create a new feature layer in my map that is part of my content. And sometimes it can take a few minutes. It all depends on the size of the data you're working with and so forth. While we're waiting for this, I'll show you a few other things. You, of course, have a measure tool that allows you to do some analysis right on the map and so forth. And it looks like it's finished. Now we can see the output layer gets added. And if we look at its legend and so forth, we see the hotspot analysis that was done. I honestly had a little technical glitch. I had to go back and re-add it to my map from my content, but you can see here the legend that it creates and so forth. Now to share your map, you want to click here where it says share. Oh yeah, we have to save it. I'll give it my last name. And I'll call it ArcGIS Basic. So that will save the map to my content. And then to share it, I want to make it public. That'll allow the link. It's going to want to update some of the feature layers that were in there, such as this hotspot layer that got created when I was doing this demonstration. And I go and grab this link and put it into my write-up on the discussion thread. So that's the basics of ArcGIS, finding raster and vector layers, a little bit of analysis, and then sharing it out. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thank you.